Thursday nights at 7 p.m. right here on KXVS, the voice of Stockton.
This is Miriam, and you're listening to KXVS, the voice of Stockton.
You know what I got? I got a picture of his face with the little pillow on, the sleep face, and we're in Chicago.
Are they already in Chicago?
The one and only Leo Biaz. Hey, Leo.
I'm excited to be back, my man. It was 9 days in Vegas. We got stuck in the desert, and we had a little hangover remix out there, man.
I wore a wig to school once, and they said no headgear was allowed.
How did
spider web
was it
tights.
obvious that it was a wig?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was
It was
having
a terrible
fun.
wig.
See, this is exactly why we have them on the show, and this is what makes them fun.
You're listening to KXVS, the voice of Stockton, 92.1 FM.
Do you want to relive the golden days of Stockton? Join Nate Knott on Stockton Alive every first and third Monday at 6 p.m. Tune into thevoiceofstockton.org.
Hi everyone, this is Dr. Julie Dameron, local veterinarian for over 20 years. I am so excited about my new radio show, Tales and Tips, on Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, Voice of Stockton, and KXVS Radio. I will discuss relevant issues affecting animals and pet owners today, how to avoid common problems, and how to extend the quality of life for your cherished companions. As a community advocate, I will also discuss important social issues that affect our city. I plan to showcase organizations and heroes who are doing amazing things to help others. Remember to tune in every Tuesday morning at 10, starting soon.
This is Miriam, and you're listening to KXVS, the voice of Stockton.
You know what I got? I got a picture of his
My name is Josh, and you're listening to KXVS, the voice of Stockton, 92.1 FM. Catch us live on Facebook, YouTube, and the TuneIn app.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program do not necessarily reflect those of KXVS, the voice of Stockton, or its parents, affiliates, management, and staff.
The Voice of Stockton on KXVS presents the premiere of Tell It Like It Is with your hosts, Jerome Clay and Motex Sanchez.
Hey Stockton, how y'all doing? Yeah, this is Jerome Clay, and I'm with my boy Motex, and we got our new show, Tell It Like It Is, where Republicans and Democrats come together for fiery sessions in a no-holds-bars kind of atmosphere. So what do you got to say about that?
There's some bars in here. Speaking of bars, salud. We're gonna enjoy this over. We got this idea from former President Obama, right?
That's true.
What was his name? Lou Gates.
Professor Gates
got arrested for trying to enter his own home.
That's correct.
By an officer who just happened to be of the Caucasian persuasion.
That's right.
And Obama called a beer. What was it called? A beer summit.
Beer in the White House. Beer summit.
The beer summit in the backyard of the White House. So the whole idea was let's come together over a beer, right, and try to find common ground, which is becoming more and more rare, I guess we could say, in today's political climate. So here we are, a friend of mine, Jerome Clay. I'm Motex Sanchez, and we're here to talk politics and beyond.
So let's get into today's topic. We're talking about political rhetoric and how does it affect the public participation?
Participation, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So first off, we got to talk about the Philly shooting that just happened the other day.
Rest in peace to all the victims out there. And
right.
My heart goes out to all those families that are dealing with that tragedy.
Sad situation. I think 11 had died. 8 confirmed were males
at the Jewish synagogue.
At synagogue, and 3 were females. and I think they were over 54 years old of age. Something
One
like that.
of them was I saw a report on I can't remember the source, but I saw a report that said one of them was a 97-year-old woman who had actually survived the concentration camps in Nazi Germany.
Right.
So it's kind of ironic that she had survived that ordeal during World War II, only to be killed by homegrown hate here in the United States.
Now, do you think there was any rhetoric that played into part of that? Do you think that anything that Trump had said or anything that anybody said that really played in it out? Or do you just think it was just a person who was just demented and he had an agenda and he just wanted to carry out this assault?
I think that you're always going to have those people on the fringe that are willing to be susceptible to those terroristic type of tendencies. But I think really what people are talking about now in today's political climate is the amount of rhetoric that is being used that is flipping the switch on those individuals, that is actually encouraging them to action, to carry out acts of violence. And I think another great example is the ardent Trump supporter that was just arrested for mailing those bombs to several of President Trump's critics. So I would look at that and say there's a direct connection between rhetoric that we've seen President Trump during his campaign for president, using certain lines where he was actually encouraging violence in certain instances, making statements like, in the good old days, we would have handled somebody this way and that way, and I'll take care of that guy and I'll pay your legal fees. And to me, as an observer of that, I look at that and say, well, that's pretty much akin to encouragement. That's using rhetoric that is actually inciting, if not all out encouraging violence.
So that we say that, then what about this? Okay, so we have Steve Scalise, remember the Republican congressman, and the Bernie Sanders supporter went out, shot Steve Scalise, and shot all those individuals. Now, do we burn Bernie Sanders for that? So I think that, yes, you might have rhetoric, but does that really make an individual go out and commit these heinous crimes? Or if that's just in a person and he's going to do it and he might be using that just as an excuse to go out and commit these crimes?
Well, look at the difference, right? Let's look at, okay, this individual was a Bernie Sanders supporter.
Right.
But can we tie his actions to any of Bernie Sanders' rhetoric, right? And I think that's the difference, where with Donald Trump, we can look at certain examples and say, well, here goes an occurrence where he actually encouraged people to action.
Okay.
And then the most extreme of that actually took that as a marching order, carried it out, and was doing so as an extension of like his support for the president. Now, I'm not saying that it's not like Donald Trump gave him, orders and text him on his iPhone that he said he doesn't use, that China's listening into supposedly. But there's no evidence of that, of course. But there is, at some point we have to hold elected officials accountable, especially the president of the United States, to say, look, the words matter, and the words that you were using, and this is something that Donald Trump has said himself, correct?
Right.
He's even come out and said that. He said, look, words matter, but my issue with him is that he does not seem to be following his own advice.
So since words matter, we had, the former attorney general said kick him, right? When they go low, we kick him. You had other individuals, congressmen and senators. You had a senator say, get up and face some congressmen. You had other individuals that say you can't be civil with these people. So I still don't...
We've seen Mitch McConnell get harassed at the...
Right, so we see Mitch McConnell get harassed. We see Ted Cruz. We see...
Ted Cruz is the other
Secretary of Homeland Security gets harassed. So...
The other one was, what's the press secretary?
Sarah Hannity Circle, right? At the, what is it,
whatever
red
restaurant,
roof hotel or
it wasn't that. It was a restaurant.
But I'm just saying, you have other Congress individuals that said, when you see them, tell them they're not welcome here anymore. So I still don't blame them when situations like this occur, because at the end of the day, they're not saying go out and shoot individuals. They're not saying go out and harm. To me, they're saying get out and protest. Now, whether I agree with the way they're saying to get out and protest, but they are saying get out and protest, right? Get out, get up, tell them that welcome. That's your First Amendment right to protest. Get up in some congressmen's faces. People can look at it one way or the other, but that's your First Amendment right. When Ted Cruz was in the airport, he said, "I respect your First Amendment right," and he kept walking. They didn't put their hands on him. They didn't do any of that. So even though individuals said certain things, rhetoric, it didn't. You can't blame them unless they specifically say, "Look, go out, send bombs, go out, shoot." Then I think at that point we can say, "Well, you know what? It's going too far. Then we need to tone it down."
Do you think it's at that point?
I think it's at that point. I think really that the president and from both, I think both parties need to come together and say, "Look, we're being attacked on both sides, and we need to have unity, even if we have our differences. Like me and you have differences, right? So, we know that I'm hardcore Republican, you're a hardcore Democrat, but you still have to agree to disagree. You still have to respect people's opinions. And now it's getting lost. If you're one way or the other, then people just flat out will just disrespect you. If they don't agree with what you're saying, they'll call you racist, homophobe, xenophobe. So I think the rhetoric is becoming I think the rhetoric needs to be addressed in the sense that they need to stop it and tone it down, but there needs to be a call for unity.
Well, I think, that's unity. What does that look like? Because I always have the argument and the standpoint that unity for the sake of unity alone really doesn't do anybody the favor except for the people that are in those positions of power that are trying to avoid the accountability and the friction that comes with accountability, such as protests. But I think there's a big leap between telling people or encouraging people that should protest or quote unquote resist to telling people, "I'm going to pay for your legal fees if you go hit this man in the mouth," right? That, to me, that's a big difference. But speaking of, I think you touched on a good point where we're talking about people being ridiculed for their just for having differences of opinions that supposedly society says they shouldn't have. And to me, a great example of that is what we talked about earlier is Kanye West supporting Donald Trump. Donald Trump, right? Donnie Trump. Hey, that's going to be his new name from here, Donnie Trump.
So even with Kanye, I think he had the right to go to the White House, and he had the right to express his First Amendment right. To me, they were friends before he was elected. That was his friend before, and will probably be his friend whether he gets impeached, not impeached, runs again, wins again, or loses again. I think they were friends before. Now, the issue I have with the way Kanye was treated was, because he went to the White House, he was called Uncle Tom, and they referred to him as the character Samuel Jackson played in the Django, right? So, now, if you didn't like the message that he delivered, now some people say, the message was just flawed in how he was delivering, he was rambling all over the place. That's a different discussion. They should say, you know what,
with that one,
if you didn't like the message, then the message, they should say, look, what he was saying was all over the place. He wasn't making a complete sentence. He rambled and rambled. Instead of just because he was there as a black man supporting Trump. So even if he was on message, he still would have been criticized. I mean, and you look at this. Now, CNN, had a few individuals called him uneducated Negroes, and one said his mother's rolling over the grave.
You're talking about Don Lemon.
Yeah, right. So now if Fox News or One American News or any conservative news station would have attacked Kanye like that, or even attacked Barack.
Does Fox News even have any black anchors?
They have some black anchors. Juan Williams on the 5, right? So
I thought Don Williams on CNN though.
Juan Williams.
Don Lemon. Okay.
Juan Williams.
I don't watch it, so that's why I'm asking.
I mean, I'm just saying though, if they would have said he was uneducated Negro, then everyone would have been, oh my God, this is a racist show. We need to protest and shut it down. So now CNN's allowed, whether you agree with Kanye or not, right? Whether you agree with how he delivered the message or not, to really now, because they didn't agree with what he was saying, and they didn't agree that he went and spoke to the president, they attacked him. So now it's like, wait a minute, because we can't agree to disagree. We have to call him Uncle Tom. We have to call him an uneducated Negro, right? And even now, look at conservatives like Ben Shapiro was trying to go to UC Berkeley. And look at what UC Berkeley did. They tried to tear their campus out. And that's supposed to be the home of the free speech. Free speech originated at UC Berkeley. And yet now it's got to a place, if you're not liberal and if you don't think like liberals, that we're going to burn your school down. I mean, so why can't people just agree to disagree and have healthy debates and say, wait a minute, I don't believe in this because of this, this, and this, and then come to some kind of common ground?
You know what? I mean, I agree with you on the point that both sides have become fanatical to some extent and become so polarized that there is this mob mentality of this group think that if you are not, you know, exactly like following along with what we say and what we do, and you know, full disclosure, when you say I'm a Democrat, I'm a registered Democrat. I have been since I was 18 years old. Right. But I am more in the wing. I was a Bernie Sanders delegate, right? So I say that because I don't agree with the platform. I have major issues with the Democratic Party establishment, right, and the direction they've taken. So I can look at this from a certain lens and say, you know what, I agree with you that I myself have seen that in the Democratic Party, to where for those of us who supported Bernie Sanders, if we didn't agree with Hillary Clinton, there at the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia, I firsthand witnessed the pushback to that, the discrimination, the all out, in some cases, abuses. Right. So I agree with you that that has occurred on both sides, but I would say one of the differences is that when you have it coming from is one thing coming from a president, I mean a candidate or a party, but I think that there's extra responsibility when it's coming from a president, right? When it's coming from the sitting president who is supposed to be above even both parties. And I think that's one of the things we've gotten away from in the United States, is that parties serve their purpose. But I think that once somebody becomes president, they are supposed to be above reproach. They are supposed to be above the influence of either party. And they're supposed to represent what's best for the people. And I think now what's happened is that, and I will say I do see a certain extent of that with Donald Trump and the fact that the Republican Party initially did not support him, right? But now that he's there, it's like they're fighting tooth and nail to protect their champion.
But even with that rhetoric, right, he went and said, I'm going to build a wall. I'm going to have Mexico pay for it. He went and said, I'm going to do tax reform, the biggest tax cut in history. He went and said, I'm going to build infrastructure. He went and said that I'm going to do the health care. So the reason why I believe the Republican Party is supporting his agenda is not because they support Trump per se, but for some reason he's got along with this conservative agenda. Like you see him now, he's supporting, I mean, he's putting in place federal judges, right, conservative judges. He appointed 2 conservative judges to the Supreme Court. And so he is following the Republican, really, handbook. So that's why the Lindsey Grahams of the world is coming to him. That's why the Ted Cruz's of the world who were against him are like, wait a minute, for whatever reason, he laid out this agenda and he's checking off. So I will tell you this, a president is supposed to, when he gets elected, he's supposed to unify and heal the country, because during a divisive campaign, you know, you say certain things and the other side say certain things. And Barack was the best at that. He would try to unify, you know, both parties. But as you know, if I'm a Republican and I win, Democrats really not going to support me. Like what Barack had it hard because Republicans really didn't support him, and a lot of Democrats didn't support him. So what Trump has done,
we were not supporting him because he was too cozy with the Republicans.
But what Trump has done is said, okay, you know what? Whoever my base is, they're the ones that put me in office, and so they're the ones that can keep me in office. So if I start running out and supporting, you know, try to support Democrats, then I'm gonna lose this base, right? I got 60 million, and there's some independents that are gonna say, wait a minute, I like what he's doing, I like what he's saying, I like that You know,
that's the key right there is the independence.
Right, the independence.
That's why
So-
Hillary Clinton lost, and that's why as a Bernie Sanders delegate, we knew Hillary could not beat Donald Trump because she could not pull independence. Right.
Right.
So I agree with you with the independence, but the question remains is that how much of that is him appealing to his base, and what is he appealing to?
So-
right? Is it all out racism? Is it xenophobia? Is it homophobia? Is it all these phobias or isms? And
I don't think so. Let me tell you why. Okay, so case in point, the Elizabeth Warren. Let's talk about her. We got to get on her. So Trump has been calling her Pocahontas for a long time, right? And so it must really affect her because she went out and, as you know, she took this test, right? And she was proud of herself for being 1,024th what percentile of. And they don't even know if it's Native American. They got it narrowed down to 3 countries that might not even be no Native American in it. And then she has the audacity to ask for the $1 million. But even better than that, she makes a video in the Native tribe, and it was so bad that even the Cherokee had to release a message. But that was from that's from Trump's. But you know that's from Trump's rhetoric, right?
But that's
His
where
rhetoric.
I can agree with you on that was a bad move on her part. It gets back to So let's combine Elizabeth Warren with getting back on Kanye West, right?
Okay.
Because it's also the rhetoric, not only the rhetoric of like xenophobia, sexism, racism, homophobia, etc., but it's also the rhetoric of like identity politics.
Okay.
Right? Like Elizabeth Warren, in some corner of her mind, thought that if she could prove she was 1,024th, whatever, of a percentage of Cherokee or whatever she tried to claim, that would somehow give her some type of like
gratification,
like not just gratification, but almost like
what would it justify?
What I say carries more weight because I'm this, right?
Right.
And that's the problem that I have.
But how did she get into Harvard? Wasn't she listed as Harvard as a colored woman?
Yes, so that's what I'm saying. That's
Right.
the problem that I have with identity politics, because on one hand, you have somebody like Elizabeth Warren, who is a Democrat, who is, I stopped supporting her when I saw how she dealt with the whole Bernie versus Hillary thing, right?
Right.
But my thing is like, that goes an extra step beyond to where, at what point in time did that become relevant to her in her politics, right? And was it because she's taking advantage of a system that was set up to correct past injustices, that Harvard would say, hey, maybe we've had a problem with Native Americans in the past that we need to correct this, i.e. affirmative action, etc., to where they create these programs. You have her come along who has zero connection to the Native American community.
Right.
Even DNA-wise, now she has proved herself that she has no connection to Native Americans, right? Like, how somebody can claim 1 in 1,000
right.
is beyond me, as if
Right.
that was some type of validation. But my thing is,
even with that,
she felt that would somehow give her like some type of a soapbox to say,
but it did. What
I'm
happened?
representing the Native American population, therefore what I say should be taken with more weight. But the reality is, you have zero connections to them.
Why? But with the CNN, okay, so I was watching CNN when that happened. I couldn't wait to watch CNN. From Don Lemon to Chris Cuomo to all of them, they felt that she was justified. Like, they were like, they proved it.
And that's what I'm. But those are the same people that were calling Kanye West Uncle Tom and a sellout,
yeah.
correct? So that's the issue that I have even with. I like some of Kanye's music, his older music. I like the old Kanye, right?
Not the new Kanye.
And people that are hip hop fans, they understand what we're talking about right now. Right. But the thing is,
you wearing the Yeezys today?
It's pre-Kardashian and post-Kardashian, right?
But at the post-Kardashian, when he wearing the Yeezys, I seen you.
Nah,
with some Yeezys
he started
before
that with Nike.
Okay,
he started with Nike, but that's another kind of saga. But the thing is, if you really break it down, who is the media to say Kanye West doesn't have the right to support Donald Trump? Like, where is that rule written down to say? And the reason why I bring this up is because I just saw a story on Friday where Donald Trump spoke at young black Republican leadership.
Yeah, they had.
I forget the title of it. It wasn't the NAACP.
Right, no.
It's called a Young Black Republican Leadership of America or something like that. And these were like high schoolers, college students.
Right. And they were supporting him as well. They were
a room full of
young
black men and women, a lot of them wearing the red Make America Great hats again.
That's true.
That are made in China, most likely.
That's true, too.
Speaking of rhetoric, right? So the thing is, now I come from a activist background, right, where I can look at that and say, okay, there's this side of the line, that side of the line. These people are with us, and these people are not. Mm-hmm. But the rhetoric part of it, to me, where I have to question that is, now for me as an activist that has put in work, I feel like I got the right to say that, right? But where does Don Lemon or some other news correspondents come in feeling they have the right to prescribe that label on somebody when they are not from an activist background?
Right.
They are not from that type of, effort and engagement, but they're using it openly and readily, in my opinion, in my eyes, as a political tool, right? To serve a certain agenda that at the end of the day, even I have to admit, Kanye West has some great points, right? Now he came out today where he's talking about he's making a new shirt or something telling black people to leave the Democratic Party, right? People will call him a sellout for that. But we have to question at the end of the day, even as a progressive Democrat, I have to question how much really is the Democratic Party establishment serving us? Or historically have they served Chicanos, African Americans, right? And if we look at the numbers and statistics, it's like I can't knock him for that, right? Now I can't support him for supporting Trump, but I can't knock him for criticizing the Democratic Party.
And I think what he's doing is trying to get people to be free thinkers, because just because you're African American doesn't mean you have to vote Democrat. I tell people this: whether you Democrat, Republican, research the candidate and vote who makes a change for your life, not vote for party lines, right? Because sometimes, I might vote one way that my party doesn't vote only because that individual is better for me and my family. And so I think a lot of times people just get into this: if I see an R behind his name or a D behind his name, then I must vote this way. And it shouldn't be like. And I think that's what Kanye is trying to say: is be a free thinker. If you like Trump or if you hate Trump, vote for him or don't vote for him. But don't do it because he's a Republican. Don't do it because he's a Democrat or not a Democrat. Do it because you don't like his policies. Do it because you don't like his tone or you don't like his racism. Do it for other reasons other than him being a Republican. But I tell you, I think with the rhetoric sells. I mean, let's face it. He gets these big old campaign rallies, right? Texas, 22,000 people or so. He talks about Elizabeth Warren, and the crowd goes wild. Now he's talking about Dianne Feinstein. He called her with the leaker, right? And he got that little thing where he puts his hands up and goes, "We didn't leak, did we?" And he turned around, and the crowd goes wild. He talks about...
We got to remember he came from reality TV.
Right, and he talks about Blumenthal when he said Blumenthal said he was a war hero out there. What was it then? Was it Connecticut or something like that?
I didn't catch that.
Well, Blumenthal, when he said he was the war hero and he saved all these lives. So he talks about things that me and you might talk about or people might talk about on the couch. So what he's done is he has taken the couch conversation to the White House. And so now that's all he's done. He's taken a friendly conversation that you might have with your friends to the White House. All right. And so when he has these press conferences, listen to the way he's talking. He's talking like he's a commoner sitting on the couch, having a beer in his hand, and you're talking about people. And so the majority of people might not say it, but they find that funny or humorous, and he's getting traction because if he wasn't, why is Barack on the campaign trail? Barack hasn't, I haven't seen him out campaigning for people ever when he was president. Why is Hillary out there campaigning? Why is all these Democrats? Because they see his rallies, right? And they see how big they are, and they see that people are being influenced by the rhetoric. And so, to me, I think he does it not only to amp up his base, but I think he does it because people sitting on the couch, even though they might say well, he might need to tone it down, but they might say he's getting things done. Case in point, remember he talked about what Rocket Man, Fat Rocket Man, call him Fat Man, and he gonna send him to the sky and blow him up, right?
Who was this?
Kim Jong-un, right?
I remember. Okay,
and so,
I recall.
And now,
next thing you know, they were giving each other flowers and
right.
kissing each other
Now
on
they
the
have
cheek.
a love romance, a bromance, right?
Okay.
And so, did that rhetoric work? You know, and look at what he's doing with China, right? And so he's saying he's got all this tariffs on China. But this is another thing, too, people don't realize. When he does this rhetoric, and the bigger it is, he's always going to sign an executive order that no one sees, right? So you got Democrats are not talking about the tariffs that is hurting Ford, hurting Harley Davidson, right? They're not talking about healthcare that he got rid of mandates. You know, my insurance costs went up. They're not talking about the insurance. They're talking about, oh my God, he insulted Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
So I believe he's strategically doing this rhetoric.
You think it's
Because
that smart, huh?
I think it is. I think because he said I'd rather have him talking about that than have him talking about the underlying policies, because the underlying policies are going over above everybody's head.
Yeah.
Right? And so now he can say, oh, the economy's good, but we know the economy goes in circles, right? So yeah, it's doing well now. I believe some of the stuff is what he's done. I believe some of the stuff is what Barack done. I think just some of the stuff is just how the economy moves. But he's taking you know, this great economy and all this, and he could just say whatever he wants, and then he'll sign that executive order that could hurt us. No one talks about it. They'll talk about, oh, he told Mitt Romney he's always on his knees and do anything on his knees. Or he'll say, you know, that collusion is a witch hunt. He'll say now the favorite of CNN and MSNBC, Stormy Daniels, they'll talk about Stormy and the creepy porn lawyer. So you get all this out there, and people are focusing on, I mean, think about this now. People are focusing on the creepy porn lawyer, Michael Avenatti. Then they're focusing on the tariffs. Why?
And that's where I agree with you, where the Democrats are falling short in politically trying to take back seats in Congress and the Senate and the White House, right? It's because they are not reaching mainstream America, the independents,
right,
with policies and with concrete, black and white, this is what we're going to do for you. Instead, they're playing along with Trump's game, where he's pretty much like, you know, leading the bull by the horns. He's keeping them so busy on their heels with these outlandish, wild, you know, statements and his rhetoric, right?
I think it's purposely done.
That, I don't know, man. I think he's incredibly just offensive, or he's just a genius that he figured out.
I think he purposely he does it. I think with because they
I think it's his personality, man. I think it's who he really is, but I think he just came at a certain time.
It just falling in line for him.
Caught with the struggle that the everyday Americans going through, and what they did was they're willing to say, you know what, I'm gonna look past. I know this guy's doing wrong. I know he's bad, but I'm gonna ride with him because I'm gonna look past all of that.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, I feel like this person cares about me. Right, it's one of those things where
because how he talks, he doesn't talk above them.
He like you say, he's taking the couch talk to what people are saying anyways.
Right.
But and that's what I feel in a certain way. Liberals and Democrats have gotten a little bit ahead of themselves, too far out on a limb, to where they've made so many people in society feel like any little thing you say will be turned against you. Right, not to say that we don't have valid points, but I think when it's gone to an extreme,
right,
I think what happens is that people change their mind, or they have a blowback to that, but they keep it internal, right?
Mhm.
Because of they're afraid of the rhetoric the same way on the left side, right? And then when it comes time to vote, they're gonna vote the way they feel like, okay, this person gets where I'm coming from. That to me is scary in the sense that I look at that and I say, this guy's gonna win again.
But you know
another
why?
4 years, right?
He
because
will.
who are the Democrats putting together, and what platform are we putting together that's going to reach out to mainstream independent America that doesn't care about either party?
Well, you know, you look at it like this. he'll take someone else's rhetoric and he'll use it against them.
Yeah.
You know, and so he'll take
he's kind of like Muhammad Ali was, and
Right.
you know what I'm saying, like leading up to a fight, and he's just throwing as much stuff at the wall that he could get out, just because he knows it's so sensational. It's going to make people want to watch the fight.
Well, look at it now. They're saying we want free health care. We want free insurance. Now, who is going to pay? I was in San Mateo over the weekend, and I was sitting at just sitting down watching the game, and I heard some individuals say, "Yeah, you know, California deserved to have free health care, and we deserve to have free education." And I'm thinking, okay, well, who's going to pay for the free education? Nothing is free in life. So even if you go,
but we find ways to pay for Afghanistan, right?
Right.
45 billion.
Okay.
I mean, we paid how many trillion over there now? That's how I look at that and say, well, it's not about whether or not we have the money. It's where we're willing to
who's
prioritize.
Paying, but even who's paying for Afghanistan?
We're all paying for it.
We are. So then that means we would have to pay for the free health care, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's about where we put priority. Is it like, do we want to put all of our eggs in this basket, or do we want to invest in our own people, make sure that we're healthy, make sure that we're having healthy futures, and
so cut back on
giving to the next generation?
So how would it go? So would you say you follow the New York model, where it's you can go to a state or university, but then you have to stay in that state for like 5 years, but the private, we won't affect the private, just the state university. You think that should be a good model? And then what happens when you have all these applications coming in, because now everything is free? Now, where are kids going to go if they can't get in? Because now, I mean, you know, Stanford, all these elite schools, I guess they would be public, but they only take so many. Like UC Berkeley probably only takes so many students. So now what? I mean, that still might not solve the problem.
We got to remember, for California specifically, the UC and CSU system, community college system, was designed in the 1950s, called the Master Plan. It was designed to be primarily free, as an investment, a post World War investment into the future generations, right? And that's why these universities became world renowned, like UC Berkeley. It's because of the investment that was placed in it by the legislature, by the government, by the taxpayers. And I think we've forgotten that. We've gotten away from that because we've allowed business interests to permeate all factors of American society, from the president down to grade, your local school district, right? And I think that's where we need to get away from. But I think whether or not we agree with that politically, I think that we can both agree that those should be the real issues that we're focusing on, right? And the rhetoric of campaigning distracts from that.
But he takes that rhetoric, right, and then he twists it in such a way. So he takes the opponent's their campaign rhetoric, and he takes it and he twists it. And so now you got people like that don't probably even have education. Like, well, why do I want to pay? I don't even got an education. So I mean, he's using their rhetoric against him. So until they figure out, okay, how can we do the same with him? But he likes it, right? He enjoys it. And I think the reason why he got elected too was he didn't go in where like this, I'm holier than thou. He didn't go in as, I'm a faithful man to my wife. He didn't go in as, I never lie or whatever. I mean, people know he lies. I think he went in.
People had low expectations of him already,
right? Because he didn't go in with the pre notion that I'm better than you.
Yeah.
Other than I'm smarter than you because I make all this money, but it wasn't like my life is better than yours. So I think people, can look at that and say, you know what, I'm not voting for him because he's faithful to his wife, right? I'm not voting for him because he married a supermodel wife. I'm not voting for him because he didn't pay taxes in New York.
Was she a supermodel or just a regular model?
I don't know what she was, but I'm just saying.
She was just a regular model.
Well, regardless of what she was,
I just want to go on a record. I just want to clarify.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, I don't think they voted for him because of those things, because he didn't go in saying, I got the best marriage. He didn't go in saying, I'm the most morally person.
He didn't try to say he had the best haircut.
Right, the best haircut. So because he didn't say that, now people are trying to attack him for it. But he didn't say it to begin with. So that's why people didn't vote for him for that. And so until they really start getting on issues and saying, look, even if you are in the free education, we have, what did Tupac said, we have money for wars but can't feed the poor, right? So until we get into that mentality and say, look, we got all these $1 trillion going to Afghanistan. We got all this money going into the military. We have the most powerful military force around. Why don't we cut back some of that money and get an education? But no one's talking like that. Or what they just say is free education, free healthcare. He says, okay, I'll take that. And the Democrats want to give you free healthcare and education. Then the whole crowd goes wild instead of really saying, no, this is how we can fund it.
Well, see, part of that is, speaking of rhetoric and speaking of internal politics in the Democratic Party, those are some of the things that Bernie Sanders and progressives are proposing, right? So if there is academic conversation around that, first you have to get past the internal filter of the Democratic leadership, where they're the ones. It's like the rhetoric they're using against progressives has then been adopted by Donald Trump,
right,
and the Republicans, and they are, people forget there's a primary and then there's the general,
right,
and there's always this dynamic where whoever survives past the primary had to do so much damage to their opponents,
right,
that you give so much ammunition to the competition. But I think, to get back specifically to rhetoric and what's going on in the nation today, I think there is rhetoric that we can say has dominated the political discourse in our nation today, both politically, locally, and nationally, right? But I think it's also, in light of the recent events that have happened with the bombs being sent to legislators and to the shooting that happened at the synagogue yesterday, I think that there comes a certain point in time to say, okay, look, there's one thing in talking smack about the other side or making jokes about them or portraying them a certain way that's going to get support. But I think there's lines that get crossed where you start actually dipping your toes in the waters of violence, right? And inciting
but why is that?
Violent action.
But I think the real reason is because both parties are not working together. And so Trump has created this illusion that only the Republicans can get it done, right? Because the Democrats are obstructionists. He didn't call them obstructionists. And I think a lot of people, because it appears...
And the same thing was happening when Obama was in there,
right. But the difference is Trump is calling them out on a large stage. Obama was presidential, and he wouldn't have conducted himself this way. And I think because he didn't conduct himself this way, people didn't really realize how bad he had it. Trump will come in, and he'll magnify it 10, 20, 100 times worse. And so he'll go in, he'll say, Chuck Schumer and the Democrats are this. Do you want Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House? Are you going to have his investigations? So what he's done is he's put a real big light on, like maybe the disagreements that they might have, and he's kind of turned the tables on them. So now they got to be defending themselves, and really, instead of saying, wait a minute, the reason why we're fighting them is because we didn't like this tax plan for this, and this. However, we proposed another tax plan, which they didn't do, which lays out this, and this. They're not coming back with nothing, with a solution. They're just saying, we don't like him, don't vote for him, we're going to impeach him. But they're not saying, wait a minute, this is how we're going to fix health care. They're not, I don't see anything out there that's saying, go check out, the Affordable Care Act and look at the changes that we proposed. I don't see them saying, go check out our plan for taxes, go check out our plan for infrastructure. And the best, they don't say, well, go check out our plan for if you don't want a border wall, if you don't want that, well, how do we protect, or do we allow caravans to come in? They don't have this plan. They don't have a plan in place themselves. So if you don't have a plan in place yourself, and this individual is talking rhetoric, he can call your bluff because you don't even have a plan.
Yeah. And it becomes, and we got to remember, where did Trump get some of his, I would say, influence from? It's almost as if American politics now on a national level have become a bad episode of WWE. You know what I'm saying? where you got presidential debates and rallies now have become somebody walking out the chute. Yeah. And with the smoke going up and the announcer, you know what I mean? And it is almost as if, which Trump has been part of those shows.
Yes.
And it's almost as if that's what our national politics have descended to. And it's kind of sad for a nation that touts itself as like the beacon of light for the rest of the world for democracy. Right. And I think that's what we as Americans should be focusing on, and I think that's what maybe we should get into to wrap up the show is how much of that is the public's fault. And when I say that is because how much of it is a result of the decline in the quality of our elected officials is the direct result of the lack of participation and apathy by the general public to even pay attention to what's going on.
Okay, so even this. Okay. So let's talk about the border wall that we have. 'Cause, we got you got these. I don't know how many 14,000 they say people coming over right from Honduras and other parts of Central America.
I keep seeing it. One source will say 5,000, another 14, source say 10.
An unknown amount, right? That are coming over here. Okay, so you have this caravan, and then you had before. Remember, you had the kids locked in cages, right?
That both. I wanted to say for the record that both Republicans and Democrats were doing.
Right, and so so this is what Trump has done even with that. Okay, so you have kids, minorities, Caucasians. You have them in America right now. They get separated from their parents, and I don't see no politician run to the courthouse to protect them. And so that's what he's done. He's flipped it. Like, wait a minute, you care more about illegals coming over here than you do kids that are being separated from their parents legally. You look at the homeless. Like, you can go, we're in Stockton, we go under the bridge, and we see homeless everywhere, right? It was so bad that even Caltrans built up a wall over there by the DMV, put that gate up, and kicked them. Remember, they kicked them.
Now they're in everybody's neighborhood.
Now they're everybody's neighborhood, right?
You.
So we have homeless here, and yet people are like, let them in. And I'm not saying we shouldn't let them in, but I'm saying, what about the individuals that are here that are doing bad?
Well, I think they're different circumstances, right?
Okay, so the homeless here is a different circumstances than the homeless.
Most definitely, because it's not just a simple fact of them being homeless or being automatically deemed as illegals, but I think that we have to look at it through the lens historically understanding the role that the United States federal government has played in Central South America. The CIA, our military covert operations like Iran-Contra, Oliver North and Ronald Reagan themselves getting caught up with that.
But do they send them aid? Let's keep it out. Do the United States send these Central America aid? They do. They send them.
But you got to understand the dynamics of that aid, right? If I'm sending aid to a dictatorship that is oppressing violently their people and suppressing democracy. That is exactly what's causing the dysfunction.
So who do you send it to the people?
That is having people flee north for safety.
So where do you send the money if you're sending the aid?
We got to look at this. Well, I think I would say policy-wise, the United States government, military, CIA, should stop intervening in these countries because in the 80s, they were so afraid of communism spreading that they were willing to create all this collateral damage that happened with the Sandinistas, Iran, like I said, Iran-Contra. So now where more documentation's coming out that they were involved in the illicit drug trade that created the crack epidemic here in the United States. Right. All these facts are coming out 20, 30 years later that we have to look back in how our government interfered, right? And then we can't have this attitude of like, well, people are just coming here to get our good things and they're just illegals coming to invade without first looking in the mirror and understanding what did we do, not us per se, but what did our government do and what did we as a populace allow our government to do in our name because we're not holding them accountable. Right. That's what I'm trying to get back to is say, what role and responsibility do we have as citizens, meaning that, and when I say citizens, I don't just mean what your legal status is. Citizens, I mean in the old school context of like the Greek definition of like a citizen means you're somebody who is engaged in the happenings of your community.
Right.
And what do we as citizens in our community take responsibility and accountability for to say, look, I'm going to start actually reading what are these propositions about that I'm voting on? What are these commercials about? You know, what's going on at the school district? Even if I don't have a kid in the 6th grade or what have you, I'm paying attention what decisions are being made with my tax dollars that are affecting the community. I think that that's a lesson to be learned for all Americans, regardless of legal status, to say where are we now as a country. And I think the rhetoric highlights that, to say, you know, it's like a WWE episode. You know what I mean? I'm looking for Vince McMahon to come out any time now. You know,
but once again, I like I said before, I truly believe that he uses the rhetoric twofold because it distracts from everything else. I mean, right now, you know, case in point, we've been having this, you know, Russian investigation going on for almost 2 years, and for the last probably month, we haven't talked about. We talked about Judge Kavanaugh.
Warren.
We talked about Elizabeth Warren. Now we're talking about, I mean, Michael Abernathy's in the news, right? He done made himself a star. And now, you know, even I read somewhere, Stormy Daniels, that even Swednick saying that he might have changed her decoration page, right? So he might be in some serious trouble.
For Stormy
Who
Daniels?
knows? No, for the Julie Swednick, the one where was 10 gang rapes, right? But I'm just saying is all this is fueling him. Instead of what the Democrats are trying to do, they're trying to fight the master of rhetoric with rhetoric.
That's a fight that
you're not going to win, right? And so you're trying to fight an individual who feeds off of big crowds, who loves to fight, who loves rhetoric, and you're trying to give him rhetoric. Case in point, right? You had one of the senators, Mr. Booker, went after Kavanaugh, you know, about being highly ethical and different things, or even with Dr. Ford. But you had a bizarre case to come out against him.
Yeah, I just saw
well,
that.
It's bizarre, right?
Yeah, it is.
However, do we use his same standard how he did Justice Kavanaugh, right? So then Trump can take that.
And what just for our viewers, what were those circumstances? If you just want to educate them real quick.
So I'm not going to educate. They can go read that for themselves. But
what do they got to Google? Tell them the keywords they can go Google,
just
man.
Pull up Cory Booker's
allegations,
and they'll come up.
Bathroom
allegations.
All right, we'll just leave it there.
Yeah, terrible allegations. I mean, they're so funny and ridiculous. But however, he went after Justice Kavanaugh, right? And I believe Dr. Ford's credible, and she could be credible. I'm not saying she's not. She could be. But he held this standard. So now, when there's something even as bizarre as his, do we hold that same standard? So now Trump can take this rhetoric. Now he can run away with it and say, wait a minute, this individual, remember Spartacus, has said, you know, this individual's credible. Well, I think this individual's credible. And now he's backed into a corner because it's like, wait a minute, I set the bar high with what I did, and he's going to take it against me to use the rhetoric, right? And he even, which was sad, he even took Dr. Ford and turned it on her. And remember, he was like, I don't remember, but I had one beer. I don't remember, but I had one beer. I don't know how I got to the bathroom, but I had one beer. He took that and turned it into rhetoric. And he had women. Now, let's say this really did happen, right? Let's say hypothetically, let's say it happened.
Okay.
You got women in the audience now laughing at a victim. Right? He doesn't change the narrative to where they laugh at a victim, but yet, let's talk about some other rhetoric. You had Keith Ellison's accuser, right? We don't know if it's true or not. She's saying that Keith Ellison dragged her off the bed, but yet I don't hear no one other than
Keith Ellison is
he's the second in the DNC and he's running for Attorney General of Minnesota.
So we let our viewers know.
But he's not. But Trump took that and he went at his campaign and he talked about Keith Ellison, right, and how the Democrats are not doing FBI investigation. That so he takes their rhetoric and he turns it against them. And then they're silent, right? So,
well, that's what I'm saying. At what point do we, as the American public, say, look, regardless of what political party or what side you're on.
Right.
We're tired of the rhetoric. Let's get down to business. What are you going to do about these taxes? What are you going to do about the health care?
Right.
What are you going to do about us still being in Afghanistan,
right.
For what? 17 years now, longest war in American history.
And it's costing us every day they're over there. It's costing the American tax dollars. We need to be focused on these things.
And both of us are veterans, right? So that's what I'm saying is like, let's at what point do we say, look, we don't want to hear your side of the rhetoric. We don't want to hear your side. We want to get down to what's really going to move this nation forward and what's really going to serve the everyday average hardworking individual that constitutes this nation, right? And I think that you and I can both agree on that, right. So I think that's where we end the show because we got Mr. Don over here telling us that we're down to the wire.
We're over time. So you can check us out. The show is called Tell It Like It Is. I mean, on this show, we're not going to hold no punches back. If it gets fiery, it gets fiery. And if we agree, we agree. And if we disagree, we disagree. But we want to look at it from a standpoint we can agree to disagree. Just because we are in a different party doesn't mean you can't have conversations on topics, right? Even political topics that are fiery, and I have a view and you have a view, we still should be able, even if it gets fiery, to say, look, I respect your opinion, even though I don't agree with your opinion, but I respect your opinion. So go ahead and like us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. You can follow us at KXVS Radio. And thank you, and we'll be here on next Sunday, same time.
Yep.
And we're bringing it, Tell It Like It Is.
Salute to that. Happy Sunday, everybody.
Happy Sunday.